I sold my company for millions and my parents stole all my money. My name's Lucas, and I'm 25 years old. 5 years ago, I had a dream that changed my life. I wanted to create a startup in technology that could help people improve their fitness. At 20, I was full of ideas and energy, ready to take on the world. I remember sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by piles of notebooks filled with sketches and plans. I often stayed up late, fueled by coffee and my passion. My friends would tease me, saying I was obsessed, but they didn't understand. This was more than just a business to me. It was a way to make a difference. The idea came to me during a late-night run. I noticed how many people struggled to find the right guidance for their fitness goals. There were apps everywhere, but most of them felt complicated and unhelpful. I wanted to create something simple, something that could inspire people to get moving and feel good about themselves. I spent countless hours researching, coding, and designing. I taught myself everything I could about app development. Some days I felt lost and overwhelmed. There were times I questioned whether I could really do it, but deep down, I knew I had to try. I reached out to friends who were into fitness. I asked them about their struggles, what tools they wished they had. Their responses fueled my motivation. I gathered feedback, tweaked my ideas, and slowly started to see a clear path. When I finally launched my first prototype, I felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. I remember the day I shared it with my friends. I held my breath as they tested the app. To my surprise, they loved it. They found it easy to use and appreciated the motivation it provided. That feedback gave me the confidence I needed to take the next step. I decided to invest everything I had into my startup. I moved back in with my parents to save money, working odd jobs during the day while coding at night. It was tough. I missed my independence, but I was determined to make this work. I spent weekends in coffee shops, surrounded by my laptop and the buzzing energy of other creators. As time passed, the app started to gain traction. I began to receive emails from users thanking me for helping them reach their fitness goals. Those messages kept me going on the hardest days. I felt a sense of purpose that I had never experienced before. However, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were setbacks too. I faced technical challenges that seemed impossible to solve. Sometimes I wondered if I was in over my head. I learned to embrace failure as part of the journey, pushing through the frustrations. I would remind myself that every successful entrepreneur faced obstacles. After months of hard work and dedication, I decided to seek funding to grow my startup. I put together a pitch and reached out to investors. I was nervous, but excited. This was my chance to take my dream to the next level. I remember practicing my pitch in front of the mirror, rehearsing every word. Finally, the big day arrived. I stood in front of a group of investors, my heart racing. I spoke passionately about my vision and the impact my app could have on people's lives. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, one investor leaned forward, a smile spreading across his face. He believed in me. That moment was a turning point. Over the next few months, I secured enough funding to expand my team and improve the app. I hired talented developers and designers who shared my passion. Together, we worked tirelessly to refine our product. It felt like a dream come true. As my startup began to grow, I realized the importance of my journey. It wasn't just about building a successful business, it was about helping people. I wanted to inspire others to take charge of their health and well-being. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I was ready. With each step forward, I felt a fire inside me, a belief that anything was possible. Little did I know, the greatest challenge was yet to come. After years of hard work, the moment I had dreamed of finally arrived. My company, which had started as a simple idea in my small apartment, was now thriving. I had spent countless hours building my team, refining our app, and connecting with users. Every challenge had only fueled my determination, and now it was all paying off. The day I received the offer to sell my company was surreal. I was sitting in my office, the sun streaming through the windows, when my phone buzzed. It was an email from a major tech company, expressing interest in acquiring us. My heart raced as I read the words, disbelief washing over me. This was the opportunity I had worked so hard for. I scheduled a meeting with their team, my mind racing with thoughts of what this could mean for my future. I could hardly concentrate as I prepared. Would I be able to let go of something I had built from scratch? But deep down, I knew this was a chance to take everything to the next level. When I finally met with their executives, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. They praised my work and shared their vision for how they wanted to integrate my app into their ecosystem. I listened, absorbing every word, imagining the possibilities. They believed in my dream, and that fueled my confidence. After days of negotiations, the deal was signed. I remember the moment I received the call from my lawyer, confirming the sale. It was a whirlwind of emotions: joy, relief, and disbelief. I had sold my company for millions. It felt like a dream. I took a deep breath, letting the news sink in. I had imagined this moment countless times, but experiencing it was something entirely different. I felt like I was on top of the world. I could finally breathe a little easier. With the money from the sale, I had a new sense of freedom. I no longer had to worry about my finances. I could afford to travel, take care of my family, and invest in new ideas. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I decided to celebrate with my friends and family. We gathered at a local restaurant, laughter filling the air as we toasted to my success. I felt surrounded by love and support, and I was grateful for everyone who had been a part of my journey. As I looked around the table, I realized how important these relationships were to me. They had stood by me through the late nights and the challenges. I promised myself that I would use this success not just for me, but for those who had always believed in me. With newfound resources, I began to explore new ventures. I started investing in projects that excited me, particularly those focused on health and wellness. I wanted to create positive change in the world, just as I had with my app. My mind raced with ideas for new startups. I wanted to combine technology with social impact, helping people lead healthier lives in innovative ways. I attended conferences and met inspiring entrepreneurs who were changing their communities. Each interaction fueled my desire to keep moving forward. But amidst all the excitement, I felt a strange emptiness creeping in. I had achieved what I had set out to do, yet something was missing. I began to realize that success wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about fulfillment and purpose. I took time to reflect on my journey. I remembered the late nights spent coding, the countless emails from users who found inspiration in my app. I missed that connection. I needed to find a way to engage with people again, to feel that sense of impact. So, I decided to launch a new initiative: free fitness workshops in my community. I wanted to give back and help others on their fitness journeys, just as I had once done. I reached out to local gyms and fitness instructors, excited to bring this vision to life. The first workshop was a success. I saw people of all ages coming together, eager to learn and grow. As I stood in front of the group sharing my story, I felt a rush of joy. This was what I had been missing: the connection, the sense of purpose. In that moment, I realized that success wasn't just about selling my company or making money. It was about creating meaningful experiences and helping others. I felt renewed, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. But as I celebrated my success and the new direction I was heading, I had no idea that life would soon take a turn I could never have imagined. Life was going well, and I felt on top of the world, but everything changed in a moment. I had just wrapped up a successful workshop and was buzzing with excitement when I got a call from my lawyer. He sounded serious, and my heart sank as I listened. "Lucas, we need to talk about the paperwork from the sale," he began. Confusion washed over me. I had thought everything was settled. But as he explained, my stomach dropped. There were issues with my bank accounts that I had never anticipated. Later that evening, I met my parents for dinner. I wanted to share my recent successes and plans for the future. As we sat down, I felt a strange tension in the air, but I brushed it off. I thought it was just my imagination. I launched into my stories, sharing the joy of my new workshops and the exciting projects I was considering. But their reactions were not what I expected. They nodded along, but there was something in their eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. After dinner, I casually mentioned my lawyer's call. That's when the conversation took a dark turn. My mom's expression changed, and she hesitated before speaking. "Lucas, there's something we need to tell you." My heart raced. "What is it?" They exchanged glances, and my dad finally spoke. "We were trying to help you, son. We thought it would be for the best." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice rising. My mom took a deep breath. "When you sold your company, we wanted to make sure everything was secure. We had you sign some documents." I felt a cold sweat break out. "What documents?" "They gave us access to your accounts," my dad said. "We thought it would help you manage your finances better." It hit me like a punch to the gut. "You what?" Panic rose within me as the realization sunk in. "You took control of my money? You betrayed my trust." Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. I couldn't believe this was happening. My parents, who I thought were my biggest supporters, had turned into strangers. They had manipulated my trust for their own gain. "Lucas, please, we just wanted what was best for you," my mom pleaded. "Best for me?" I shot back, my voice shaking. "You stole my money. You didn't even ask me." I felt anger bubbling up inside me. I had shared my dreams and my struggles with them, believing they would always support me. And now, I realized they had been plotting behind my back. "I can't believe you did this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know who you are anymore." My dad reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I couldn't look at them. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt lost. I had built my life on trust and support, and now it was shattered. I left the restaurant in a daze. My mind was racing, my heart heavy with disbelief. I wandered the streets aimlessly, not knowing where to go. I felt like a fool, betrayed by the people I had always counted on. I spent the next few days in a fog. My lawyer tried to explain the situation, but it was all too much. I had to fight to regain control of my accounts, but the thought of battling my own parents was unbearable. I didn't know who to talk to or where to turn. Friends who had once been my support system seemed distant. I felt isolated in my pain, grappling with feelings of anger, confusion, and heartache. Each time I thought of my parents, a wave of betrayal washed over me. I couldn't comprehend how they could do this to me after everything I had shared with them. I replayed our conversations in my head, searching for signs that I had missed, clues that would explain their actions. The emotional weight was overwhelming. I found myself questioning everything. Had my parents really cared about me, or had they only seen me as a means to an end? I realized I needed to take action. I couldn't let them control my life any longer. I reached out to my lawyer and began the process of regaining control of my finances. It was going to be a long, hard road, but I knew I had to fight for myself. But even as I took those steps, I felt the ache of betrayal in my heart. I had once thought of my parents as my foundation, but now they felt like a crumbling wall. I had to learn to trust again, but I didn't know if I could ever do that with them. As the days passed, I tried to focus on my work, but it was difficult. My heart was heavy with the weight of their betrayal, and I felt a part of me had been broken. I knew I had to keep moving forward, but I also had to face the truth of what had happened. The world I had built began to feel uncertain, and the path ahead looked darker than ever. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long journey filled with challenges I had never imagined. The days turned into weeks, and I felt like I was sinking deeper into a dark hole. The shock of my parents' betrayal hung over me like a heavy cloud. I had lost my money and my trust in those I loved most. Each day became a struggle to get out of bed and face the world. With my finances in disarray, I found myself drowning in bills and debts I had never imagined facing. My lawyer was doing his best to help me regain control of my accounts, but the process was slow and exhausting. I felt like I was running in circles, trying to catch my breath, but the weight of my situation only grew heavier. I had once been filled with excitement and purpose, but now I felt lost. The workshops that had brought me joy now felt like a burden. I would stand in front of eager participants, forcing a smile, but inside, I felt empty. My passion for helping others was overshadowed by my own despair. Every time I opened my bank account, I was reminded of what I had lost. The money that should have represented freedom instead served as a painful reminder of betrayal. I felt a constant knot in my stomach, a mix of anxiety and anger that wouldn't fade. As the pressure mounted, I began to withdraw from my friends. I stopped answering calls and avoided social gatherings. I felt ashamed and alone. I was no longer the confident entrepreneur everyone knew, I was just a shell of my former self. In my isolation, I started seeking ways to escape my pain. I turned to drinking, hoping the alcohol would numb my feelings. At first it felt like a relief, but it quickly spiraled out of control. I would drink alone at home, drowning my sorrows in cheap bottles of whiskey. But the moment the buzz faded, the reality would come crashing back, leaving me more lost than before. Then came the drugs. It started with just a few pills, something to take the edge off. But as the days turned into weeks, I found myself relying on them more and more. I was looking for any way to escape the crushing weight of my life. I had once dreamed of creating something meaningful, and now I was chasing a high just to feel something. Anything. I was falling, and I couldn't seem to stop. My life spiraled out of control. I stopped going to the gym, stopped eating properly, and my health quickly deteriorated. I would wake up with no energy, often struggling to remember how I had ended up in my own bed. The dreams I once had faded into a blur of smoke and shadows. I began missing meetings and ignoring deadlines. My business connections started to notice my absence. I could feel the disappointment in their voices when they reached out. I was letting everyone down, but I didn't know how to pull myself back up. I felt trapped in a vicious cycle, and every attempt to break free only seemed to tighten the grip of my addiction. One night, after a particularly heavy binge, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by empty bottles and a haze of confusion. I looked around and realized I had lost everything. My dreams, my health, my relationships, everything was slipping through my fingers. I felt a wave of despair wash over me, and for the first time, I truly confronted the depth of my downfall. I was scared. The person staring back at me in the mirror was a stranger, someone I barely recognized. I had always prided myself on being strong and resilient, but now I felt weak and broken. The thought of reaching out for help crossed my mind, but shame held me back. I had built my life on the idea of success, and now I was the very definition of failure. How could I face anyone after everything that had happened? But as I sat there, I realized I needed to make a choice. I couldn't keep living like this. I thought about the workshops, the people I had helped, and the difference I had wanted to make. Deep down, I still wanted to find that passion again, but I knew I had to confront my demons first. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. My hands shook as I searched for a support group. It was a small step, but it felt like the first light breaking through the darkness. I didn't know where this path would lead me, but I knew I had to try. I had to fight for my life, for my dreams, and for the person I had once been. That night marked a turning point. It was time to face the music and begin the long journey of healing. I had no idea how hard it would be, but I was ready to take that first step, no matter how difficult it might be. It was time to reclaim my life, one day at a time. The moment I decided to seek help was the first flicker of hope I had felt in a long time. I started attending therapy sessions regularly, sitting across from a kind woman who listened without judgment. At first it was hard to open up, but slowly I began to unravel the layers of pain I had buried deep inside. I talked about my parents and the betrayal. Each session felt like a small weight lifted from my shoulders. My therapist encouraged me to express my anger and frustration. I had every right to feel hurt. My parents had taken so much from me. They had stolen not just my money, but my trust and security. As the sessions progressed, I found myself confronting feelings I had long ignored. I realized that the anger I felt toward my parents was a part of my healing process. It was okay to be mad, to feel betrayed. I didn't have to forgive them just because they were my parents. They had made choices that deeply affected my life, and I needed to honor my feelings. That's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I decided to take legal action against my parents. It was a daunting step, but I couldn't let them get away with what they had done. I didn't just want my money back. I wanted to stand up for myself and reclaim my life. With the support of my therapist, I gathered the courage to meet with a lawyer. He listened to my story, nodding as I detailed the betrayal and the financial chaos that followed. He explained the process and assured me that I had a strong case. The more I talked about my situation, the more empowered I felt. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control. After I signed the papers to begin the lawsuit, I felt a surge of determination. This was my fight, I spent the next few weeks preparing for what lay ahead, focusing on my healing and the steps I needed to take to rebuild my life. But as the case progressed, I was reminded of how cold my parents had become. They didn't reach out to check on me or offer support. It felt as if I had disappeared from their lives. I tried to understand their perspective, but every time I thought about the betrayal, the anger flared up again. I found solace in my therapy sessions, where I could vent my frustrations without fear of judgment. My therapist helped me see that it was okay to hold on to my feelings of hurt. I didn't have to forgive them, especially when they hadn't shown any remorse. They had acted in their own self-interest, and it was time for me to prioritize my own healing. Every court date brought mixed emotions. I felt anxious, but also empowered. I would sit in the waiting room, feeling the weight of my decision. I was fighting for myself, and with each hearing, I grew stronger. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it motivated me to keep pushing forward. During this time, I also focused on rebuilding my life. I returned to the gym, finding strength in physical activity. I took up running again, feeling the fresh air clear my mind. Each step felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity. I started to meet new people, individuals who shared my interests and passions. I felt a sense of community that had been missing for so long. My therapy sessions also encouraged me to explore new opportunities. I began volunteering at local community centers, sharing my fitness knowledge with others. It felt good to give back, to see the positive impact I could make in people's lives. Each interaction reminded me of my purpose. As the lawsuit progressed, I learned more about the legal process. It was challenging and often frustrating, but I was determined to see it through. I had my ups and downs, but I kept reminding myself why I was fighting. I needed to reclaim my life, to show my parents that their actions would not define me. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. I had prepared for this moment, but nothing could prepare me for facing my parents in that setting. As I entered the courtroom, I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was not the same person I had been before. When my parents walked in, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. They looked different, hardened, unrepentant. I could see it in their eyes. They were still focused on themselves. In that moment, I realized I didn't need their approval or forgiveness. I was here for me, to take a stand for my life. The hearing was intense, and I felt the weight of my emotions. I spoke about my experience, the pain of betrayal, and the consequences of their actions. I was honest and raw, and as I spoke, I felt a sense of liberation. I was finally telling my story, reclaiming my voice. When it was over, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. I had taken a huge step, but the road ahead would still be long. I knew I couldn't change my parents, and maybe I didn't want to anymore. I needed to focus on my own healing and growth. With every challenge, I was learning to fight back, to stand tall despite the betrayals. This journey was mine, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I would no longer let their actions define my life. I would rise from the ashes and create a future filled with hope and purpose. The day I received the news that I had won the lawsuit was one of the most overwhelming moments of my life. My lawyer called to tell me that I would recover all the money my parents had stolen. I felt a rush of emotions, relief, joy, and a renewed sense of power. After all the pain and struggle, I had finally taken back what was rightfully mine. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but smile. It was a victory not just for my finances, but for my spirit. I had fought hard for this, and it felt good to know that I had stood up for myself. I realized that this money represented more than just wealth. It was a symbol of my journey, my resilience, and my determination to reclaim my life. But soon after the initial excitement faded, I received a message from my parents. They wanted to meet. Part of me felt a surge of anger at the thought of seeing them again. After everything they had done, I couldn't understand how they could just reach out as if nothing had happened. I considered ignoring their message, but something inside me felt compelled to respond. I agreed to meet them, but I set clear boundaries. I wanted them to understand that I wasn't interested in reconciliation. I needed them to know how their actions had impacted my life. The meeting was tense. As I walked into the small cafe where we agreed to meet, I felt my heart race. They were already seated, looking somewhat nervous. When they saw me, their expressions shifted to a mix of hope and guilt. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, but it only fueled my anger. "Lucas," my mom started, her voice trembling slightly. "We just want to talk." I cut her off. "You took everything from me. You don't get to just talk and expect forgiveness." Their faces fell, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. They needed to understand that this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was a betrayal that had caused me deep pain. I felt no obligation to make them comfortable. "We were trying to help you," my dad said, his voice low. "We thought we were protecting you." "Protecting me?" I echoed, disbelief pouring out of me. "You thought stealing my money was protecting me? You betrayed my trust, and I will never forget that." They shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I could see they were struggling to find the right words. But it was too late. I had made my decision. I would not let them back into my life. Their attempts at reconciliation felt hollow, and I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. As the conversation continued, I felt my anger boiling over. I told them about the months of pain and confusion I had experienced because of their actions. I spoke about the struggle to rebuild my life and how their betrayal had shattered my sense of security. They sat silently, absorbing my words, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. After what felt like an eternity, I stood up, determined to leave. "I hope you understand that this is the last time we will meet. I need to focus on my future, and that doesn't include you." Their faces reflected a mix of sadness and regret, but I felt no sympathy. I had given them enough chances, and now it was time to move on. With the money recovered, I began to plan my new life. I had always dreamed of living by the beach, and now I finally had the means to make it happen. The thought of waking up to the sound of waves and the smell of salt in the air filled me with excitement. I could almost feel the sun on my skin and the freedom of a new beginning. I started looking for a place to live near the coast. I wanted a small, cozy home where I could relax and find peace. I envisioned mornings spent walking along the shore, evenings watching the sunset, and a life free from the chaos of the past. As I made plans to move, I felt a sense of clarity. I knew that I was no longer the person I had been before all of this happened. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined to create a life that reflected who I truly was. I found a charming little house just a few blocks from the beach, with a small garden where I could plant flowers and herbs. The moment I walked through the door, I felt a wave of warmth and possibility wash over me. This was where I would start anew. With each passing day, I packed up my belongings and prepared for the move. I felt lighter as I filled boxes with memories of the past. I knew I was leaving behind not just physical items, but also the weight of betrayal and pain. As the moving day approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I was ready to leave my old life behind and embrace the unknown. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew it was time to step into a new chapter. The day I arrived at my new home was filled with joy. I stood on my porch, looking out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the shore, and I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was finally free to live life on my own terms. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty air fill my lungs. This was my fresh start. I would rebuild my life, one day at a time, and I would do it without the shadow of my past hanging over me. I was ready to embrace the future, and all the possibilities it held. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you next time.